Hi, my name's Mark, one of the pastors here at Trillium. I've been really enjoying Major League Baseball recently. Last season, the Jays were playing really well at the end. They made it almost to the World Series. And this year, they've been playing pretty good, and I've been following it a lot more closely than I have in a long time. And I was asking the congregation on Sunday, who were the Jays' biggest rivals in Major League Baseball? And they came back with the obvious, New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, Baltimore Orioles, top three. And then they mentioned the Tampa Bay Rays. These are all teams that are in the American League East that are rivals for the pennant to get on into the playoffs, into the World Series to win the championship. And then, of course, I suppose you might say all the other teams in the American League are also the next level of rivals. And then all the other teams in the National League, all the other 29 teams in total are the ultimate rivals of the Jays. Let me ask you this. Why are the Toronto Blue Jays and the Montreal Canadiens not rivals? I think the answer is pretty simple. They don't play the same game. Their goal is totally different. The Toronto Blue Jays are going for the World Series. The Montreal Canadiens are trying to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, they're just not operating in the same universe. There's the differentiation between the two franchises is too great. They're not even rivals in sports franchises because they're not even operating in the same city. There's just no overlap. The differentiation's huge, and there's no rivalry. And I mention this to you because I think we've been brought up with a belief. It's been around for a long time that it's the differences between people, individuals, groups of people, between sports franchises, tribes, nations. It's the source of conflict in the world. It's the differences that produces the rivalry, which produces the conflict, which escalates into violence. And if we could just somehow get past these differences with each other, if we could just find some way of resolving these differences or seeing past them to the point of the unity that we share, that the world would become a lot less violent and filled with conflict. We'd be more peaceful with each other. But I don't think that's actually the case. In fact, I think it's the similarity or the alikeness and not the differences that's the source of most of the conflict in the world. I mean, look in your own family. Which child are you most likely to have the greatest conflict with? The child who's most like you or the child who's least like you? On Sunday, when I mentioned this, the congregation laughed because they all recognized pretty much that it was the child most like them that they were likely to have the most conflict with. But we've been taught that it's the differences that it's a source of conflict. How can it be that the child who's most like us is the one we have the greatest challenges with and the most conflict with? Well, it's because, again, it's the likeness and the similarity that we share with people that's actually at the source of our conflict with them. When we're going for the same goal, when we're imitating each other in very practical ways, that's when we're most prone to rivalry and conflict and violence. So it's likeness leading to rivalry, leading to conflict, leading to violence that we should be on guard with. And I invite you to take a close look at that in your own life when you're in situations of conflict with people and see whether or not what I'm saying to you is true. The Bible says actually the source of all of this is a conflict between us and God, a basic conflict between us. And it exists in this rivalry. And it's not because God and us are so different, it's because human beings and God were so much alike. The Bible says we're even made in God's image. The divine image lives with us. We're like God. And we can't deal with this. The scriptures say the great existential crisis we deal with is that we can't deal with our likeness with God. And there's this antipathy that comes from us, and we move away from God. And the solution that God comes to is God becomes like us. And that's where Jesus comes in. Jesus is that emissary of God who's like us. And the promise that Jesus gives to us, his whole life is rooted in it. His teachings, his example, his very death itself is that Jesus will not become our rival, ever be our rival in life. He'd rather die than be our rival. That's why the scriptures focus so much on Jesus' death and the kind of death he experiences. It's a non-rivalrous death with us. In that escalation that could come from the rivalry with the conflict into the violence, God gives us instead open hands, perfect hands of love. There is no rivalry in God with us, probably never was. And the invitation's been given to us to now enter into non-rivalrous relations with each other. And that can only happen when we embrace our similarities, rejoice in them, and seek to celebrate our similarities with each other. Not only is our own happiness dependent upon it, the very survival of the world is too.